Maya arrived at the hotel just after sunrise, carrying nothing but a worn backpack and a small travel pouch. The lobby doors opened for her automatically, letting in a warm rush of air that smelled faintly of coffee and polished floors. She paused inside, taking a slow breath. She had been traveling for hours and her clothes were creased from the long ride. Her hair was tied back loosely, and anyone looking at her might think she was just another tired traveler hoping for a place to rest. But the moment she stepped toward the check-in counter, she felt the shift in the room. A few heads turned, not in a friendly way, but in the way people look when they think someone does not belong. Maya wasn't surprised. She had walked into enough places in simple clothes to know how people sometimes judged before even exchanging a word. The receptionist, a young man with neatly combed hair, looked up from his desk. His smile was thin, polite only on the surface. When Maya approached, he hesitated before speaking, as if unsure whether she was a guest. "Good morning," Maya said softly. She tried to sound cheerful, even though her body felt heavy from the long journey. "Morning," the receptionist replied, but his voice lacked warmth. He glanced quickly at her backpack and then back at her face. "This area is for guests checking in. Are you sure you're in the right place?" Maya blinked, taken aback. She hadn't expected a warm welcome. She didn't expect the first sentence to question whether she belonged there. "Yes," she answered calmly. "I have a reservation." The receptionist let out a small breath. Not relief, but something closer to annoyance. "Right? Well, do you have proof of that? We need a confirmation number." His tone wasn't rude exactly, but it carried a sharp edge, as if she was inconveniencing him. Maya nodded and reached into her pouch. Her hands were tired, and she moved slower than usual. As she searched for her confirmation slip, she noticed the receptionist leaning slightly, watching her in a way that made her feel like she was about to cause trouble. "I have it here," she said. Before she could hand it over, another receptionist, a woman wearing bright lipstick and a tight ponytail, walked over. "Is everything okay?" she asked her colleague, though her eyes were focused on Maya, scanning her clothing, her bag, and even her shoes. "She says she has a reservation," the young man answered. The woman raised an eyebrow. "For here?" Maya offered a small smile. She didn't want conflict. She only wanted a room, a shower, and a few hours of sleep. "Yes, for here," Maya repeated. The woman glanced at the computer screen but didn't touch the keyboard. "We're fully booked for the next few days." "Are you sure you didn't mean one of the hotels across the street?" "They're more flexible." Maya understood what she meant. She had heard words like that before, words used to politely push people away. "I booked a room in this hotel," Maya said again, still trying to keep her voice even. The woman sighed, clearly not convinced. "Look, we have strict booking rules. Guests for our suites usually arrive with more luggage, and they don't usually walk in." She paused as if searching for a polite word, but none came. Maya didn't need her to finish the sentence. She knew exactly what the woman meant. "I'm not trying to cause any issue," Maya said softly. "I just want to check in." The woman folded her arms. "We just need to make sure everything is valid." "But honestly, without proper luggage or any sign of 'let me check your name'?" The younger receptionist interrupted, though not out of kindness, more like impatience. Maya gave her name. He typed it into the computer, his fingers quick on the keyboard. Maya waited quietly, but she noticed the small smirk forming on his face as he searched. "Yeah, I'm not seeing anything," he said, turning the screen slightly, toward his coworker, not toward Maya. The woman leaned in. "What did I tell you?" "Probably the wrong hotel." She gave Maya a thin smile, the kind that was meant to look kind but wasn't. Maya's chest tightened. Not out of anger, but out of disappointment. She had hoped at least this morning things would go smoothly. "Could you please check again?" she asked. The woman sighed loudly. "Ma'am, we have other guests to attend to. If you don't have a reservation here, we can't spend all morning on this." Maya opened her pouch again, about to show her confirmation slip, but before she could pull it out completely, the woman lifted her hand in a stopping motion. "Actually," she said, "maybe we should call security, just to help clear things up." Maya froze. "That won't be necessary." Her voice remained calm. but she felt her stomach twist. The woman had already signaled to the guard standing near the entrance. The guard, a tall man with a radio on his belt, began walking over. He didn't seem aggressive, but his presence was enough to make the atmosphere shift. A few guests turned to look, whispering quietly. Maya looked around and noticed the eyes on her. It was the same look she had seen too many times, suspicion mixed with judgment. The guard stopped a few steps away. "Everything okay here?" "Yes," Maya answered. "I'm just trying to check in." The woman receptionist gave a rehearsed smile. "We're having trouble locating her reservation. And she seems a bit confused about which hotel she booked." Maya felt a small sting in her chest at those words. She wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She wasn't pretending. The guard rested his hand near his belt, not touching it, but close enough to show authority. "Do you have any ID?" he asked. "Of course," Maya said. She reached into her pouch again. But before she could show anything, the young male receptionist added, "Maybe it's better if she steps aside so other guests can check in. This area isn't for people. Waiting around. People. Not guests. Just people." Maya closed her pouch gently. She took a breath that trembled slightly. She didn't want to fight. She didn't want drama. But she also couldn't simply walk out. "I am not waiting around," she said quietly. "I have a room. I have a confirmation." The woman receptionist exchanged a look with her coworker, an eye roll she didn't hide well. The woman spoke again, this time with a firmer tone. "Ma'am, if you don't leave this area, we will need to escort you out. We can't allow disruptions in the lobby. Guests are complaining." Maya turned slightly and saw a couple watching her with curious eyes, but they weren't complaining. No one was complaining. She realized the receptionist was simply using those words to justify pushing her out. The guard stepped forward. "Let's step over here for a moment, okay?" Maya looked up at him. Not angry, just tired. "I haven't done anything wrong," he didn't answer. He just gestured again for her to move aside. The young receptionist clicked his tongue softly, impatient. "This is taking too long. Can someone just check her bag or something?" Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. Not embarrassment, but a soft ache that came from being judged without a reason. Her voice remained soft. "Could you please just check my name one more time?" The woman receptionist scoffed. "Ma'am, we don't have time for this." Maya realized then that no matter what proof she showed, they'd already made up their minds. The guard moved closer, slowly but firmly. "Ma'am, you're going to have to step away from the counter." Maya didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She only stood there quietly for a moment, letting the weight of the situation settle inside her. She had been treated unfairly before, but something about this morning being exhausted, being dismissed, being judged for her appearance made the moment feel heavier. Still, she took a step back. Not because she agreed, but because she didn't want things to escalate. The woman receptionist turned to help the next guest, acting as if Maya were no longer there. Maya stood a few feet away, holding her pouch close to her chest. She looked around the lobby. People were still watching, though some pretended not to. She didn't cry. She didn't sigh. She simply waited. She knew things would unfold soon. And she knew something the staff did not. Her identity, the one they hadn't bothered to ask about, was far more important than they could imagine. But for now, she stood quietly, letting them believe their assumptions. Because moments like this, she knew, often reveal more about others than about her. Maya stood near the side of the lobby, holding her small pouch close to her chest. The noise around her continued, as if nothing had happened. Guests rolled their suitcases across the floor, staff hurried back and forth, and the soft music played from the speakers above. But even with all that sound, Maya felt a quiet heaviness settle around her. She wasn't angry, just tired in a way that made her shoulders feel heavier than her backpack ever could. She watched the reception counter from where she stood. The two staff members who had spoken to her earlier seemed almost relieved she had stepped away. They returned to their cheerful voices and polite smiles, offering help to other guests, as if their attitude toward her had never existed. The guard stayed nearby, pretending to keep an eye on the lobby, though Maya could feel his attention flicker toward her from time to time. He wasn't hostile. He was simply going along with what he believed was routine. But what struck her most was how none of them had taken a single moment to actually listen. Maya sighed quietly and leaned against a small pillar. She was planning to wait a few minutes before deciding what to do next. Maybe someone else would take over at the desk. Maybe someone kinder. Maybe someone less quick to judge. But for now, she stayed still. A few minutes passed. She noticed a housekeeping worker pushing a trolley across the lobby. The worker looked tired too, but when their eyes met, the worker gave Maya a warm smile. One genuine gesture in a morning full of cold ones. Maya returned a gentle smile. It was small, but it made her feel slightly lighter. "Excuse me?" a voice said suddenly. Maya turned. A middle-aged woman, holding a large purse and wearing a kind expression, approached her. "I'm sorry, but I saw what happened over there." "Are you all right?" Maya nodded softly. "I'm fine. Just a misunderstanding." "Didn't look like a misunderstanding," the woman said with a frown. "They didn't even give you a chance." Maya didn't want to make the woman uncomfortable, so she let out a small laugh. "It's okay. I'll figure things out." "If you need help, I can speak to them," the woman offered. "That's kind of you." Maya replied gently, "But I'll handle it." "Thank you for asking." The woman gave her hand a comforting squeeze before walking away. Maya watched her leave, grateful for the brief moment of humanity as she stood there. The guard walked toward her again, slower this time. He cleared his throat politely. "Ma'am, I don't want to bother you, but they really prefer guests to stay seated or in the waiting area if they're not checked in yet." Maya glanced at the rows of chairs on the other side of the lobby. They were empty, lined neatly against the wall. "I'm not bothering anyone," she said calmly. "I know," the guard replied, lowering his voice, "but the front desk is insisting." I could tell he wasn't trying to be difficult. He was just following instructions. Still, she didn't move. "I'll stay here," she said quietly. The guard looked unsure. But before he could reply, the young male receptionist called out from behind the counter. "Could you please direct her to the seating area? We need space here." His tone carried the same impatience he had shown earlier. The guard turned back to him. "She's not causing trouble." "That's not the point," the receptionist replied sharply. "She can't just stand around near the desk." "It looks odd." Maya felt the words land heavier than they should have. It looks odd. As if she was out of place simply for existing in that lobby. "I'll move in a moment," Maya said softly. The receptionist huffed and muttered something under his breath before turning to the next guest. Maya took another slow breath. Her patience was running thin, but she didn't show it. She decided to wait a few more minutes. Maybe the manager would arrive soon. Maybe someone would finally listen. But then, as if the morning wanted to test her even more, the woman receptionist approached her again. Her steps were quick and her expression stiff. "Ma'am," she said, folding her arms tightly, "we really need you to leave this area. You've been standing here for a while and we can't have people lingering without reason." "I'm not lingering," Maya replied gently. "I'm just trying to check in." "We've already told you we can't find your reservation," the woman said, her voice slightly louder. "There's no point staying here. Maybe you should go to the other hotel across the street and ask if your booking is with them." Maya felt a faint ache in her chest. Not pain. Just the kind of disappointment that grows when someone refuses to see you beyond their assumptions. Before she could respond, the woman added, "And please don't create a scene. Other guests are getting uncomfortable." Maya glanced around again. No one seemed uncomfortable. A few guests were checking in, some were sipping coffee, others scrolling on their phones. Nobody looked troubled by her presence. Still, the woman receptionist spoke as if Maya were a problem waiting to happen. "I'm not creating a scene," Maya said calmly. "I only want you to check my name again." "We have checked it," the woman insisted. "There is no reservation. You need to leave the counter area." The guard stood nearby, watching uneasily. It was clear even he felt the tension, but didn't know how to handle it. Maya looked at the woman for a moment. Her eyes were sharp, unkind, and filled with the confidence of someone who believed she was absolutely right. "Please step aside," the woman repeated. Maya nodded slowly. All right. She stepped a bit further back, giving them the space they wanted. But she stayed where she could still see the counter. The woman receptionist returned to her station with a victorious expression. As if she had solved a major problem, Maya closed her eyes for a moment, trying to regain her calm. She knew this wasn't the time to reveal anything. Not yet. She needed the right moment, a moment that would arrive sooner than the staff expected. Just then, an older man carrying a suitcase approached the counter. The young receptionist welcomed him with a bright smile, the kind he hadn't offered Maya. The contrast was clear and painful. Welcome, sir. Checking in today? He asked with enthusiasm. Maya watched silently. She wasn't jealous. She was used to kindness being unevenly spread. But she took note of how the receptionist instantly switched tones depending on who stood in front of him as the man checked in. The woman receptionist leaned close to the young man and whispered something while glancing at Maya. The young man smirked. Maya pretended not to notice, but something interesting happened next. The older guest receiving help at the counter turned around out of curiosity and looked toward Maya. He gave her a polite nod, almost as if acknowledging her presence, then turned back to the staff. Is everything all right with that lady? He asked casually. The receptionist chuckled lightly. Oh, she's just confused about her booking. Happens sometimes. Maya felt a small wave of embarrassment rush through her, though she hadn't done anything wrong. But the older man frowned. Well, that seems like something you could help her with properly. The receptionist froze. His smile faltered. He quickly switched back to a professional tone. We've tried assisting her, sir. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a reservation here. Maya didn't say anything. She didn't want to argue in front of others. The older man seemed unconvinced, but let it go. After he finished checking in, he gave Maya one more look before heading toward the elevator. The guard stepped close again. Ma'am, if you want, I can walk you to the waiting area. Maybe sitting down would be easier while you sort this out. Maya looked at him gently. Thank you. But I'm all right here. He scratched the back of his neck. If they ask again, I'll have to insist. Maya nodded. I understand. She didn't blame him. He wasn't the problem. He was just caught in the middle. But the real problem, judgment, assumption, impatience, was sitting right behind that counter. More minutes passed. Each one felt longer than the last. The atmosphere around her didn't calm. Instead, it grew tighter. She could sense the receptionist glancing in her direction every few minutes, as if waiting for her to give up and leave. But she didn't. And it was during one of those glances that the woman receptionist finally muttered loudly enough for Maya to hear, Honestly, why is she still here? Maya turned her head slightly, but didn't respond. The woman continued mumbling to her coworker. Some people just don't understand boundaries. The young man snorted under his breath. Maya felt a swirl of emotions inside her tiredness. Disappointment, and something else she didn't want to fully name. But despite all that, she kept her expression calm. She knew who she was. She knew the truth, and soon so would they. But before anything could unfold, something unexpected happened. The elevator dinged. The doors opened, and a man in a suit stepped out, walking with purpose, toward the counter. The young receptionist straightened up immediately. Oh, good morning, he said, sounding suddenly polished. The woman receptionist also flipped into her professional tone. Sir, we weren't expecting you this early. The man in the suit didn't respond to either of them. His eyes were fixed across the lobby, fixed on Maya. He froze for a split second, his expression shifting from surprise to worry. And then he began walking. Straight toward her. Maya could see the panic settling. In his eyes, he recognized her. And everything was about to change. The man in the suit walked toward Maya with quick, steady steps. And the moment the reception staff saw where he was heading, their confident expressions shifted. The young receptionist straightened his back, and the woman receptionist's eyes widened slightly. They exchanged a nervous look, as if unsure what they were supposed to do next. Maya watched the man approach, her face calm, but her mind quietly racing. She knew him, but she didn't expect him to appear this early in the morning. Still, she didn't move from her spot near the pillar. "Ma'am," the man said as he came to a stop in front of her. His voice, unlike the staff's, was filled with respect. I didn't realize you had arrived already." His tone was polite, professional, and a little tense. Almost too tense. Maya gave him a small, tired smile. "I've been here for a little while," the man swallowed hard, glancing toward the reception desk. "Did they assist you properly?" Maya didn't answer right away. She simply looked at him, letting the silence speak for itself. He understood immediately. The man took a deep breath and turned sharply toward the counter. "You too," he said firmly, pointing at the receptionist. "Step over here now." The young receptionist blinked rapidly. "Sir, is there a problem?" The woman receptionist took a small step back. We didn't do anything wrong." The man in the suit didn't raise his voice, but the seriousness in his tone made the entire lobby feel colder. "Both of you, come here." The guard also straightened, unsure whether he should step in or stay where he was. The receptionists approached slowly, almost reluctantly. Their earlier confidence had vanished. The young man tried to smile as he reached them. "Sir, everything is fine here. We were just handling a small mix-up." "A mix-up?" the suited man repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Is that what you call this?" The woman receptionist pressed her lips together and looked at the floor. Maya stayed silent. She didn't need to explain anything yet. The man in the suit turned toward her again. "Ma'am, may I ask? Do you have your documentation with you? If so, I can handle the check-in personally." Maya reached into her pouch and pulled out the folder she had tried to show earlier. This time, the man accepted it with both hands, treating it with the respect the staff had refused to give. He opened it carefully. The moment he saw the badge inside, the color drained from his face. "I apologize," he said softly. "I deeply apologize for this treatment." The two receptionists leaned forward to see what he was looking at, but the man shut the folder quickly before they could. He turned to them with a stern look. "Do you have any idea who you've been speaking to?" he asked. They shook their heads. "She attempted to check in," he continued, "and instead of assisting her, you questioned her, judged her appearance, and called security on her." Neither of them could speak. The young receptionist finally found his voice. "Sir, we didn't know." She didn't look like he stopped himself, realizing the mistake in his words. The suited man narrowed his eyes. "Didn't look like what?" The woman receptionist stepped in quickly. "We didn't mean any disrespect. We just thought she might have been lost or confused. We weren't sure if she belonged in this hotel." "Belonged?" The suited man echoed, his voice sharp. "Everyone who walks through those doors belongs here until proven otherwise, not the other way around." The staff fell silent again. The guard shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Maya with a guilty expression. Even he seemed to realize now that the situation had been mishandled. The suited man looked back at Maya with genuine regret. "Ma'am, please forgive us. This is not how we operate. I assure you, this will be addressed immediately." Maya nodded calmly. She wasn't seeking an apology, at this kind of rushed one. She was waiting for a change in behavior, not hurried words. The suited man took a breath. "May I walk you to the desk myself? I'll ensure you're checked in without delay." Before she could respond, the lobby door slid open again, and another man slightly older, carrying a briefcase, walked inside. He stopped when he saw Maya and the suited man standing together. The older man's eyes widened. "You're here already?" "Yes," Maya said softly. He hurried over. "Why didn't anyone escort you inside?" "I told the staff to expect your arrival sometime this morning." The suited man cleared his throat. "It seems they handled things poorly, very poorly." The older man slowly looked at the receptionists, then at Maya, his face turning serious. "Did they mistreat you?" Maya shook her head gently. "Let's not make a scene." "It's not a scene," the older man replied. "It's a matter of respect." He turned to the staff. "This woman is not just any guest. She is the official inspector sent by the company headquarters. Her job is to evaluate this hotel, every corner of it, including front desk service. A wave of shock passed through the receptionists' faces. The young man took a step back. The woman placed a hand over her mouth. They both suddenly understood. Maya was not a random traveler. She was the very person who determined the performance ratings of all employees and the overall reputation of the hotel. The older man bowed his head slightly. "Ma'am, please allow me to personally take you to your suite." Maya nodded. "Thank you." The suited man handed her folder back. "Your identification is all in order. Again, our apologies." Maya accepted it and began walking with the older man toward the desk. As she passed the staff, their eyes followed her with a mix of fear, guilt, and disbelief. She moved slowly, not out of arrogance, but because she wanted them to feel the weight of the moment. Not through punishment, but through understanding. The older man stepped behind the counter and logged into the system himself. "Your suite is ready," he said. "We upgraded it, of course. And I'll make sure your luggage is brought up as soon as it arrives." Maya nodded quietly. She didn't need anything extra. She only needed the truth to be clear. While the older man worked on her check-in, the two receptionists stood frozen, unsure whether to stay or walk away. The guard kept glancing in their direction, unsure if he should remain involved. The woman receptionist finally whispered, We didn't know. If we had known, we wouldn't have." Maya turned her head slightly. "You shouldn't treat people differently based on what you think you know." The words were soft, but they hit harder than anything loud. The woman receptionist swallowed hard. "You're right. I'm sorry," the young man followed. "Me too." "We should have listened to you." Maya nodded, not in forgiveness, but in acknowledgement. The older man handed her the room key card. "Your suite is on the top floor. If you'd like, I can escort you now." "I can manage," Maya said with a small smile. "I'm just tired." "I understand." Stepped aside, giving her the space to walk toward the elevators. Maya began to move through the lobby. Her steps were slow, steady. The guests who had been watching earlier still looked curious, but now some looked impressed. Others embarrassed on behalf of the staff who had misjudged her as she walked past the guard. He bowed his head slightly. "Ma'am, I'm sorry." Maya offered him a gentle smile. "You were doing your job. Just be careful who you listen to." He nodded, relieved by her tone. When she reached the elevator, she pressed the button and waited. As she did, she could still feel the staff's gaze on her back. Not judgment this time. Understanding. The elevator doors opened. The doors closed slowly, leaving behind a lobby filled with people who had learned something important that morning. And as the elevator rose, Maya leaned against the wall, letting her exhaustion settle beside her relief. This wasn't the end. Of the story, her inspection hadn't even begun. But the moment she revealed her identity, everything had shifted, and the staff's world, especially the two at the front desk, would never be the same again. The night had settled into a quiet rhythm inside the lodge. But the calm did nothing to ease the weight inside her mind. She sat alone in the small corner of the dining hall, her hands wrapped around a warm cup she hadn't even taken a sip from. The chatter of other guests floated softly around her, but none of it reached her. Her thoughts were louder. She kept thinking about how quickly things had fallen apart earlier that day. The embarrassment, the frustration, the way the staff had looked at her as if she didn't belong there. Even now, hours later, her chest felt tight when she remembered the way they'd tried to push her out. She wasn't angry at this point, just tired. She had traveled for long hours, she had dealt with unexpected delays, and all she wanted was a quiet place to rest. Instead, this trip was turning into something she hadn't planned for. A soft creak of footsteps made her lift her eyes. One of the younger employees nervously stepped closer. He looked unsure, like he was choosing his words carefully in his head before speaking them. He wasn't the same staff member who'd raised his voice at her earlier. In fact, he seemed like someone who preferred to avoid conflict. "Ma'am, are you doing okay?" he asked quietly, almost afraid of disturbing her. She paused, thinking about how to respond. She didn't want to bring more tension. She didn't want another misunderstanding. "I'm fine," she said softly, though she knew she didn't sound convincing. He nodded, but he didn't walk away. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for what happened earlier. I wasn't part of it, but I saw enough. It didn't feel right. She looked at him for a moment. His honesty surprised her. "Thank you," she said, and she meant it. The young man gave an awkward smile. "If you need anything, I'll be around. I know you didn't deserve that." Then he quietly walked away. Leaving her alone with her thoughts again, she stared at the table in front of her. Thinking about how one misunderstanding could turn into something so messy, she wasn't used to people misjudging her like this. She lived most of her life in calm spaces, doing her work quietly, avoiding the spotlight. She never needed people to know who she really was. But she also didn't expect situations where her identity would become the only thing that could protect her. She leaned back and closed her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the room soften the cold frustration she still carried. Maybe tomorrow would be better. Maybe she could finally enjoy the trip the way she originally planned. Just as she began to settle into her chair, she heard loud footsteps rushing into the dining area. The sound was hurried, almost panicked. She opened her eyes and turned. The manager, the same man who had spoken so sharply to her earlier, was walking quickly toward her. His expression had completely changed. Gone was the impatience, the irritation, the dismissiveness. Now his face showed something else entirely. Worry. He stopped in front of her table, his breathing slightly uneven, as if he had hurried as fast as he could. "Ma'am," he started, but his voice cracked slightly. "I need to apologize." He swallowed hard, his hands fidgeting nervously. "I didn't know. I had no idea who you were. I should have treated you with respect regardless, but I didn't, and I'm deeply sorry." She looked at him calmly, saying nothing at first. She wanted to understand what had changed. The shift in his behavior was sudden, almost too sudden. "What made you change your mind now?" she asked quietly. The manager hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if someone had pushed him to come here. "We received a call," he said. "A very important call. And they asked about you directly." That's when I realized. He let his sentence fade, unsure how much he should say. She felt a small knot form in her stomach. She had hoped her identity would stay unnoticed, at least during this peaceful trip. But once again, the quiet life she tried to lead had been disturbed because of who she was. "What did the call say?" she asked. He cleared his throat. "They said you checked in earlier and that you carry a special position. They said you should be treated with the highest level of care. They wanted to confirm that everything was okay, and they were very firm about it. Only then I understood that the woman I tried to remove was someone important." She glanced down at her cup, letting the warmth calm her. She didn't like being labeled important. She didn't want people to feel nervous around her. She didn't want anyone to treat her differently because of her role. She wanted the opposite: peace, quiet, normalcy. But normalcy never lasted long. The manager lowered his voice. "I'm truly sorry. If you allow me, I'd like to make things right. We'll arrange a better room for you. Anything you need, consider it done." She didn't respond immediately. She took a moment, breathing slowly, thinking about how humans often acted without understanding the stories behind the faces they saw. She wasn't upset anymore. She was simply disappointed by how quickly people judged strangers. "I don't need special treatment," she said finally. "I just wanted to rest. That's all." The manager deeply nodded. "Of course. You'll get that. I'll personally make sure no one bothers you again." She looked at him for a long second before giving a small nod. "Thank you." He seemed relieved, almost too relieved, and left the room quickly, probably to fix things before she changed her mind. But as his footsteps disappeared, she noticed that several staff members had begun watching her quietly from across the room. Their expressions were written with worry and curiosity. They knew someone had called. They knew she wasn't just a regular guest. And now, they were trying to understand just how wrong they had been. She tried to ignore their stares. But the feeling of being watched settled around her like a weight. All she wanted was one peaceful night. Now it felt impossible. She finished her untouched drink, placed the cup gently on the table, and stood up. Maybe a walk outside would clear her mind. The lodge grounds were quiet and beautiful at night. She could use a breath of cool air. As she walked out of the dining hall, She passed a few staff members. They stepped back politely, almost too politely. Their eyes followed her with a mix of respect and nervousness. The air outside was crisp and soothing. She walked down the stone path, listening to the soft rustling of leaves and the distant sound of water flowing from a nearby stream. Out here, no one knew her. No one judged her. No one watched her with wide eyes. She breathed deeply and finally felt the tension in her shoulders begin to loosen. But the peace didn't last long. A soft echo of faint footsteps trailed behind her. She turned slightly and saw someone from the lodge, a security guard, following at a distance. He wasn't being aggressive. He was clearly keeping an eye on her. They must have instructed him to stay near her, she thought. She didn't want to make a scene, so she kept walking, pretending not to notice. But the feeling of being watched followed her like a shadow. Every step she took reminded her of why she rarely traveled alone. Her identity always found a way to surface, even when she wanted nothing more than to be just another face in the crowd. After a while, she turned around and walked back toward the lobby. The security guard quickly straightened his posture, pretending he wasn't following her. Inside, the atmosphere was different from earlier. Staff members moved quickly and quietly, speaking in low voices, clearly aware something had shifted. When she approached the reception desk, the receptionist immediately stood straighter. "Ma'am, your new room is ready," she said softly. "We've prepared everything for you. I hope it meets your expectations." She nodded. "Thank you." The receptionist handed her the key card with both hands, as if passing something delicate, as she walked toward the elevator. The young employee from earlier, the nice one, quickly approached her. "If you ever feel uncomfortable here, please let me know," he said. "I don't want anything bad to happen again." She gave him a small, grateful smile. He was the only one who treated her like a real person throughout all this. "I appreciate that," she replied. He stepped back as she entered the elevator. The doors closed slowly, giving her a final moment of silence. As the elevator rose, she leaned against the wall and let out a long breath. The day had been exhausting. But at least now, she had a quiet room waiting for her. She hoped tomorrow would be easier. She hoped she could blend into the background again. But deep down, she knew the staff wouldn't forget. They would stay careful, stay alert, and stay curious about who she really was. And soon enough, the truth, the full truth, would spread among them, whether she liked it or not. The sun rose slowly the next morning, casting a soft light across the lodge and the quiet hills around it. She stood near the window of her new room, watching the sky grow brighter. It was peaceful, calm, and everything she had hoped the trip would be from the beginning. For a moment, she allowed herself to enjoy the stillness. But she knew the day ahead would not be as simple as she wished. The events from yesterday lingered in her thoughts. The misunderstandings, the rushed assumptions, the sudden shift when the staff found out who she really was. None of it felt fair. She never asked for special attention. She never wanted anyone to bow or panic around her. All she wanted was respect, the same simple kindness anyone deserved. After getting ready for the day, she picked up her things and headed downstairs. The elevator doors opened to a lobby that looked almost too quiet. The staff stood straighter the moment they noticed her. Their eyes followed her with a mixture of apology and curiosity. She didn't say anything. She simply walked toward the dining area, hoping to get some breakfast before leaving. But the moment she stepped inside, the room seemed to pause. Every staff member in sight straightened their posture. The manager was already there, waiting nervously as if he'd been standing in the same spot for a while. "Good morning," he said carefully, his voice low and respectful. She nodded politely. "Good morning," he shifted awkwardly. "I hope you rested well. We made sure everything was comfortable for you." She didn't want him to keep tiptoeing around her. "I rested fine," she answered simply. A table near the window had already been prepared for her, though she hadn't asked for one. A few other guests looked at her with curious expressions, clearly sensing something unusual. She could almost feel their questions from across the room. She sat down quietly and began eating. But even then, she sensed the staff watching from a distance, unsure if they should approach or leave her alone. The young employee who'd spoken kindly to her before finally stepped closer. He placed a fresh cup of tea on her table. "I thought you might like this," he said softly. She looked up at him and offered a small smile. "Thank you." Unlike the others, he still treated her like a person rather than someone to fear. He nodded and stepped aside, giving her space. When she finished her meal, she walked toward the lobby, intending to step outside for a moment of fresh air before deciding her next plans. But the manager quickly followed. "Ma'am," he said gently, "before you go, there's something I'd like to speak with you about, if you don't mind." She stopped and turned to him. "What is it?" He hesitated. "Yesterday. Everything that happened? I know sorry is not enough. I know we treated you unfairly. And after learning who you were, I realized how terribly we misjudged the situation." He took a slow breath. "But beyond apologies, I wanted to understand how we can make sure this never happens again. Not just with you, but with anyone who walks through those doors." His sincerity surprised her. She didn't expect him to think beyond damage control. She folded her arms lightly and waited for him to continue. "I don't want this place to be known for judging guests by how they look," he said. "We all misread the situation yesterday. Some worse than others." His voice softened. "I'm asking if you could share something with us, not because you owe it to us, but because we truly want to improve." She looked at him quietly, trying to decide how much she should say. She wasn't someone who enjoyed lecturing people, and she certainly didn't enjoy being the center of attention. But she did appreciate sincerity when she saw it. "I'm not angry anymore," she began slowly. "But what happened yesterday wasn't right. People shouldn't have to prove their worth before they're treated kindly. A smile or a soft tone doesn't cost anything. I wasn't asking for special treatment, just fair treatment." The manager nodded deeply. She continued, "What happened wasn't about who I am. It was about who they assumed I wasn't. That's the real problem. If I had been just any traveler, they still would have treated me the same way. That's what you need to fix. Not for me, but for everyone who comes here." Her words settled heavily in the air. The staff nearby pretended not to listen, but she could tell they were hearing every sentence. After a long pause, the manager bowed his head slightly. "You're right, and I promise, we will change this. I'll arrange training for the staff. I'll make sure they understand the importance of respect and patience. No more judging guests by what they wear or how tired they look. I want this place to be better." That's all anyone could ask for. He smiled gratefully. "Thank you for giving us a chance to do better." She glanced toward the exit doors. "I'll be checking out soon. I have other places to visit." The manager's eyes widened slightly, as if he wasn't ready for her to leave so soon. "Of course. But before you go, there's something else." She raised a brow. "What is it now?" He gestured toward a side office. "Someone is here to speak with you." They arrived not long ago. She felt a familiar heaviness settle across her shoulders. Someone coming to see her usually meant her identity had caused a ripple much bigger than she liked. Still, she followed him. Inside the quiet office sat a calm-looking man in a neatly pressed suit. He stood when she walked in. "Good morning," he said warmly. "I came to ensure everything is all right on your end. After yesterday's incident, we didn't want you to feel unprotected or uncomfortable." She let out a slow breath. "I'm fine. I didn't want this to become a whole situation." The man nodded. "I understand. But your role is important, and when situations like this arise, it's our responsibility to make sure you're safe and respected." She didn't argue. She simply nodded. "If there's anything you need, anything at all," the man continued, "just let me know. We want your trip to go smoothly." "Thank you," she said quietly. After he left, she returned to the lobby. The young employee spotted her and walked over. "Wow. Are you leaving now?" he asked softly. "Yes," she said. "It's time to move on." He looked a little sad but tried to smile. "I hope your journey gets easier from here." She gave him a gentle smile. "You were kind when you didn't have to be. That's something I won't forget. Keep that kindness. It matters more than you think." The young man nodded, clearly touched, as she approached the exit. The manager and several staff members stood together, waiting to see her off. They bowed their heads slightly as she passed by, not out of fear now, but out of genuine respect. She stepped outside, feeling the cool air brush against her skin. The sky was bright, the day open and full of possibilities. She took a slow breath. The lodge behind her would change. The staff would learn. And hopefully, no one else would have to experience what she did. She walked toward her car, opened the door, and sat inside. Before driving away, she looked back one last time. The young employee stood near the entrance, watching her with a small, hopeful wave. She waved back. Then she turned the key, started the engine, and drove down the quiet road. She didn't need anyone to know her name. She didn't need anyone to see her job title. She didn't want fame, attention, or status. All she wanted was for people to treat others kindly, no matter who they were. And as she drove away, she hoped that maybe, just maybe, her experience would help make that change possible. Even in a small corner of the world, the hills stretched out in front of her, calm and open. She felt lighter now. For the first time on this trip, she finally felt free.